All right, good morning, everybody. Go ahead and get started here. If you got your questions, go ahead and post them. Should be below the video if you're on a smaller screen, to the right of the video if you're on a larger screen. All right, let's see what we got here. All right, yeah, it looks like we got some questions in there. So first question here is from Bob L. It says, "Hi Q, I'm new to TSG. Welcome, Bob. So I've just started working through the system, starting with stable fluid spine, shallowing the club. In the meantime, trying to play golf but struggling with driver. So I have switched to 3-wood off the tee. Usually hit 3-wood much better than driver. Any suggestions for teeing off of the 3-wood as far as changes in setup, ball position, tee height, etc.?" All right, so a couple things I want to mention on that. So if you're struggling with your driver, what I would actually recommend doing instead of hitting your 3-wood, I would actually recommend choking up on your driver, because a 3-wood has a much smaller sweet spot on it than your driver does. So if you choke up on it to basically what would be like a 3-wood length, it's funny. I traveled. This is something that I've always done, but I traveled this past weekend, and I take the heads off of my clubs, when I travel, so that way, it doesn't damage anything, and then you can, you're much less likely to get a damaged clubs, by the airline if you take the heads off of your driver and your fairway wood. So anyway, in doing that, I went to put my driver back on the shaft, and uh, the female component of the shaft, the adapter, it actually cracked, and it wouldn't torque down. It just kept spinning, so it wouldn't hold the club. So I actually ended up having to put my 3-wood shaft, which had the same adapter on it, in there, and I hit my driver with my 3-wood shaft in it, and I actually had more control. And obviously, I'm not going to have as much club edge speed because the shaft is shorter, but I actually had more control of it, and was better at hitting the ball in the center of the face, and stuff like that. So something that you can do is basically choke up on your driver, to give you a little bit more control of it, and then you're going to get the added benefit uh, of having a bigger sweet spot. So it's actually going to typically work better than going to 3-wood. I don't really recommend hitting 3-wood off of the tee, unless you need to hit the ball a lot shorter, and even then, choking up on the driver is typically a better option. So 3-wood, I don't really recommend hitting off of the tee that much, because the driver is just typically, even a choked up driver is typically better than a full swing. So something to try out. Now, you may go out there and hit the driver choked up bad as well, because maybe you're doing some different things, right? But I would definitely try that, because typically not typically, the sweet spot on a driver is going to be bigger than a 3-wood. So it's going to be a little bit easier to hit usually. But let's talk about hitting fairway wood off the deck. So I don't have a fairway wood in here, so I'm going to demonstrate here with the driver. So let's just kind of pretend like it's a fairway wood. But basically, when you set up to hit a fairway wood, there's two different ways that you can hit it, right? So the first way is basically to hit it just like you would if you were in the middle of the fairway, right? So hitting it hitting down on the ball with a descending blow, right? So when you hit the ball out of the fairway, your ball position is typically going to be, let me grab a ball here, just forward of the middle of the stance, right? So if I put this alignment stick down, it's going to be a ball or two forward of this. So I put this alignment stick down. If this is going through the middle of my stance, I'm going to have that ball either there, just forward of the middle of my stance, or one ball forward of that. I find that a lot of people who struggle to hit fairway woods out of the fairway, they push the ball position too far forward. They tend to top and chunk and thin those shots, because it's hard to get them. When the ball is on the ground, we have to have a descending blow. We have to have a downward blow into the ball. And in order for that to happen, the bottom of the swing arc needs to be in front of the ball. It needs to be toward the target, right? So if I push the ball position too far forward, it makes it very, very difficult to do that, right? So if you're hitting it out of the fairway, you want to have it a ball or two ahead of the middle of the stance to help you to get the bottom of the swing arc more in front. So that'd be kind of being the main thing there. And then you just make your normal swing, right? There isn't anything special that you need to do with the fairway wood. It's more just like setting up correctly with it. Now, if you're hitting it off the tee, you can do it the exact same way. When you tee it up, I would just tee it up as basically tee it up enough to where it would be like a perfect lie in the fairway, where it's just sitting up a little bit, just like you would with an iron, right? When you hit an iron on a par three, you're just teeing it up enough to give you what would be like a perfect lie in the fairway. Do the same thing with the fairway wood. So that's one way you can hit it. The other way you can hit it is similar to how you would hit your driver. So you would tee the ball up a little bit higher and push the ball position a little bit more forward to promote a little bit of an upward angle of attack. Now, the advantage to doing this is you're going to be able to hit up on the ball a little bit, which is going to give you a higher launch and lower spinning shot that's going to give you a little bit more distance with the 3-wood. So with that, now you wouldn't want to tee it real as far forward as you would with the driver, because you're not really going to be hitting up on it as much with the driver, because with the fairway wood, it's the face isn't as tall, right? A fairway wood might be half the height on the face as a driver. So we wouldn't necessarily want to tee it up really high, because then you're setting yourself up to maybe swing under it too much and put a sky mark on your fairway wood or something like that. So you want to give it just enough room so that way you can hit up on it just a little bit. But the advantage would be, pushing the ball a little bit more forward, basically, maybe a ball or two inside of where. So if your driver would be more off the lead shoulder, you would go like a ball or two inside of the lead shoulder. And that's going to promote a little bit more of an upward angle attack, or more of a level angle of attack with the fairway wood. And you just tee it up a little bit higher to give yourself a little bit space to hit up on it. Again, the advantage would be to hit up. It would be to have a higher launch and a lower spinning. But again, the swing really isn't any different. It's just a matter of where you're contacting the ball. But like I said, I would try out the driver and just choking up on the driver a little bit. So me personally, driver is 45 inches, in length. And then my fairway wood, or my 3-wood, is 43 and a half, right? So when I was playing my, now I lost roughly about 10, 15 yards, basically because it was a shorter club, but I was more consistent with it, which was nice. Thankfully, I wasn't playing a course where I really needed that 10, 15 yards. I was playing a course where I actually needed to be a little bit more accurate with shots. So it was actually not a bad thing. It didn't really hurt me too much. But yeah, what you can do is just choke up on that driver, an inch, depending on what your difference is between your driver. And you can have your fairway wood, have it next to, hold it next to the 3-wood, or have your driver and hold it next to your 3-wood and see what the difference is, and then choke up that much, if you're so much better with the 3-wood, and then just hit it the same way. You're hitting your 3-wood, tee it up a little bit, come in nice and level it, and see if that helps you a little bit. And then as you get better and better and more confident with the driver, you can go more toward the normal way you were hitting it. So R. Morel says, "Hey Q, when working through the 20-minute shallow fixed drills, what size swing would be most effective? Arms 9 to 3/4 full. Should I ramp up? I tend to lose technique as my swing gets bigger, back to old habits." So if you can, I would definitely do a full swing, if at all possible, right? Ideally, that's what you do, is you do it in a full swing. Now, if you can't do the course, if you can't, get the ball to hook, or get the ball to start to the right and hook with the full swing, then you can see if you can kind of regress it to a 3/4 swing, get more comfortable doing it there, and then try to, as you mentioned, ramp it back up to a full swing. But ideally, I would try to do it with a full swing first. That's kind of the idea, is so that way you're much closer to what you're going to be doing it on the course, right? If you do it that way. So I'd start out with a full swing. If you can't do it with a full swing, going through everything that we talk about in there, the plan A, plan B, or, the plan B and plan C drills. So putting a barrier in the way to force the path from the inside, or doing the wall drill where you're going up the top and then keeping the club like on the walls, going down as far as you can. If in a full swing you're still not able to do those, then go trying to do that in a 3/4 swing. It may be a little bit easier for you to do that. So that would be, and a 9 to 3, I would say, is a 3/4 swing, right? If you're bringing it up to 9 o'clock, right, that's a 3/4 swing. right? So yeah, I would try it at full, and then if you have a really hard time, you can, you know, take it down to like a 3/4 swing. And I would actually like to see you try it at full and then slow it down to where you can do it rather than doing it in a 3/4 swing. So here's what I do: I try it in a full. If you can't do it in a full, I would actually slow down. Basically, try to do it at like 50% speed and see if you can do it at a slower speed, and then build up the speed from there. And then if you have trouble from there, maybe go to a 3/4 swing. If you can't do it in 3/4 swing at full speed, then back it down a little bit. But the goal would be to build it back up and get to where you can, to keep doing the course over and over and over again until you're able to do it in a full swing at full speed. All right, let's keep going. Sorry, eyes are itchy. All right, so John C. Says, hi, in most of the golf courses near where I live, the sand in the bunkers is packed down so hard. Playing a regular explosion shot is difficult. Can you suggest different strategy? Thanks. Yeah. So let's talk about the strategy for a normal bunker shot, because then it will make sense for the adjustments that you need to make in a more packed down bunker shot. So for a normal bunker shot, what we're going to do is we're going to open up the face about 45 degrees. So if that's square, right, I'm going to take this and I'm going to twist the club in my hand. Now, what I don't want to do is twist my hands, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the club in my hand and I'm going to re-grip the club to where the face is wide open. The reason why we want to do this, there's two reasons. So one is to put more loft on the club, so that way we can get the ball to go up, right? We want the ball to go up, land softly on the green, right? The other thing, and this is kind of the main thing, is to use more of the bounce of the club. So the bounce of the club is this hunk of metal that's if I hold this club straight up and down, you can see it's got a leading edge here, and then there's an angle here where if I were to set this on my hand, this hunk of metal here is touching my hand before the leading edge of the club. Now, this isn't a super high lofted wedge, so you're not really going to be able to see it as much. But if you have like a 60 degree or a 56 degree, there's going to be more bounce on there that's going to be evident. This is like a gap wedge here, or pitching wedge. Yeah, this is like a gap wedge. So anyway, what that does is it allows the club to glide through the sand more easily, right? So if we get this leading edge into the sand, it's going to want to dig down into the sand, right? And if you have normal sand, that's not what we want, because then the club's going to dig down in the sand. The club is going to get lost in the sand. It's not going to be able to get the ball to come out. We want the club to glide on the sand. So the best way to think about that is to think about like a water skier, right? So if you're water skiing, you want to have the nose of the skis up out of the water, so that way you can glide on top of the water. If you were to get the nose of the skis angled down in the water, the skis would dive down the water. So it's kind of the same thing with the club. If we get the leading edge into the sand, it's going to dive into the sand. We want it to glide through the sand and lift the ball up out of the sand, right? So that's what we want. That's why we want to open up the club face. And we also don't want to come in with a ton of shaft lean either. We don't want to get a ton of shaft lean on these shots. This is one of the only shots that you don't want to have some shaft lean with. Now, a little bit of shaft lean is fine. We just don't want to be excessive with it, because again, that kind of eliminates the bounce of the club. That gets the leading edge of the club more into the sand, which is going to make it dig. So what I like to see is the face wide open. I like to see a little bit of a wider stance. Gives you a nice stable base, and it also allows you to get the handle a little bit lower, which is important for these. If we can get the handle lower, it adds some loft and helps you to get it up out of the sand. If the handle's higher, that de-lofts the club a little bit, and then doesn't allow you to get the ball up out of there quite as well. All right. So wide stance, handle low, wide open face, and what we're going to do is we want to come in and we want to smack that sand. We're going to have the ball a little bit forward, right? We're going to smack that sand 4, 5, 6 inches behind the ball, right? That'd be a normal bunker shot. Now, if we did that on what you're talking about, a packed sand bunker shot, what may happen is, because we're using the bounce and everything the way that we want to out of a normal bunker, what would happen in a packed bunker is that bounce may hit that sand and then bounce off of it, and then you may scold the ball. right? So what we want to do is we just want to reduce the things that we're doing to make the club not dig so much, right? So when you're in packed sand, you're going to open the face a little bit less, right? You're going to hit a little bit closer to the golf ball, right? Which means you're going to be hitting down and into the sand a little bit more to let the club dig. Now, the exact amount that you need to do it is going to vary because not all packed sand is created equal, right? Some of it is going to be like concrete, right? Where it's, it just hits and bounces off it. Some of it, you're still going to be able to get into it, but it's just not as much. So it's something you're definitely going to have to go practice and adjust for. But here's what I would recommend doing. I'd go and I'd try to hit it like a normal shot, right? Go to your practice bunker and try to hit it like a normal shot. And then if you're scolding it, then I would just gradually start reducing it, right? So I would, instead of the face being 45 degrees open, I'd maybe adjust it to where it's like 30 degrees open, right? And then I would adjust to where you're hitting slightly closer to the sand, right? And a way that you can do this to know whether how close, or sorry, slightly closer to the ball, the way you would know if you're hitting closer to the ball, what I would do is I would kind of draw a line in the sand, like where the ball is. So that way you can see once the ball's gone, you can see, okay, where did I hit the sand in relationship to that line, right? Or you can put a tee like into the sand right next to your ball. So that way you can see, okay, where did I hit the sand in relationship to that tee, right? So that way you can see, okay, I hit 4 inches behind that with a 30-degree open face and I still scolded it, or that was about perfect. So now you know, okay, this is the way I need to hit bunker shots. But if you still scold it, then you may go, okay, I'm going to go, instead of being 30 degrees, I might go to like 20 degrees, and I'm going to try to hit the ball in the same, hit the ground, 3 inches behind the ball. So just keep making adjustments until you find the happy medium, and then you know, okay, this is exactly what I need to do to play in this sand, and then you're going to get better and better at being able to assess the sand and knowing what kind of shot you can hit out of it, right? So when you go and play a course that you've never played before, you can get in the sand, you say, okay, this is a little more crunchy and hard than the sand that I normally play. I'm going to open up the face a little bit less than normal, and I'm going to hit a little bit closer to the ball. And also keep in mind is that when the club doesn't dig into the sand, when you have harder sand, you're going to be catching more of the ball as well. So you also need to hit it a little bit a little bit lighter, with a little less speed. The more fluffy the sand is, the more resistance the sand is going to provide, because you're going to be hitting a lot of the sand, and the harder you're going to need to swing, right? So the more firm the sand is, the less of the sand that you're hitting, and the more ball you're hitting, the less, you're not going to hit it with quite as much speed. And then when you go somewhere that has really fluffy sand, you can feel that when you get into it, right? When you get your feet into it, you kind of dig your feet around, you can feel, okay, this is fluffy sand. I need to have the face wide open. I need to give this a good hard swing, and I need to hit, 4 or 6 inches behind the ball to get the result that I want. But it's definitely something you need to learn by doing. There's only so much I can tell you on here. It's definitely something you got to go learn by doing. But basically what you want to do is you want to, reduce the things that allow the club to glide in the sand, and increase the things little by little by little until you find what helps you to dig into the sand just enough to get the ball up out of there. All right, let's keep going. So Steve says, I see instructions saying back legs should be angled in at setup and stay in that position during the entire swing. I find this difficult to do. Suggestions? I wouldn't really recommend doing that. And forgive me if I'm interpreting this wrong, but basically what it sounds like you're saying is that you should angle your leg in like this, and then keep it that way throughout the swing. If you look at pretty much any player that's any good, they're definitely not doing that. Basically, I don't recommend restricting leg movement unless your legs are just moving too much in the wrong way. I like to see freedom of movement in the legs. If we restrict the movement of the legs, it's typically going to restrict your turn of your body, which is going to reduce your power, and it may actually end up making you come down steep and things like that. So what I like to see with the trail leg is a little bit of flex in the leaves. I don't like to see it angled in at all, because again, that's not going to help you to rotate your. We need to let the knees kind of be loose. So a little bit of flex in the knee. Generally, with the flex in the knee, what you want it to feel like is just you're in an athletic position, right? So generally, what that's going to do is if I just flex my knee to where if I drew a line straight down from my kneecap, it'd be kind of going through the balls of my feet, right? So that's a little bit of flex. A good way to kind of think about it is imagine, you're a football player, you're a running back, and there's someone running at you to tackle you, right? How would you stand? Would you stand with your legs dead straight or angled in, right? Or would you stand with your butt really, really low? Or would you be in an athletic stance to where you can move, any direction pretty freely and quickly, right? That's the way you want to feel it in your golf swing, that you can move more athletically. So typically that's just going to be a little bit of flex in the knees. And we don't need to angle it out or angle it in. It's just going to be basically flexing right out over your toes, right? So I like to see a little bit of foot flare typically. So the knee is just going to angle out a little bit, and then it's just going to have a little bit of flex in it. Then in the backswing, what I like to see is this right leg kind of extend and move that hip back and around. Now, if you're extremely flexible in your hips, you can get away with basically straightening out your leg very much. But most golfers are not incredibly flexible. So that's why you do see some tour players, not straighten out their trail leg a ton. Hideki Matsuyama comes to mind, but keep in mind Hideki Matsuyama struggles with back issues a lot, and that could contribute to it because he's restricting his body movement, and he's asking for his back to do all of it. So I would imagine, in my opinion, that if Hideki Matsuyama, if he freed up his right leg to kind of move more back and around, it would probably take some stress off of his back and allow him to stay healthy a little bit more often. But again, I don't work with him, or anything like that, but just, my opinion. But if we let that right leg straighten out, that's going to allow you to move your hip back and around, which is going to allow you to get a good turn, right? And be in a good position. So I don't recommend angling it in. And again, I could be interpreting you wrong, but I don't recommend angling it in and trying to keep it fixed throughout the swing, because that's really going to restrict your movement, right? So if you imagine if I did that, this is going to be my backswing, and then I'm more than likely just going to come over the top and steep from there. What I'd like to see is a little bit of flex, straighten it out to the top. This is a much better top to swing, much more powerful, and also a much better position to be able to attack that ball from the inside, shallow out that club. So yeah, definitely recommend more of a little bit of flex. The knee kind of goes out over the toes, so it's not going inward or outwards, it's kind of going out over the toes a little bit, and then straightening it out in the backswing. All right, let's keep going. So Jamie O says, "Hey Q, lifetime super early caster here. I tried a ton of things after joining TSG recently, and going through the 20-minute shallow and getting shallow is hard for me, probably because the club is fighting me when it's casting so early. And my latest observation seems to be that my sequencing is way out of whack. Definitely not starting from the ground on the downswing. Should I just start and focus with the step drill, or is there another bigger culprit that is causing this early casting?" So typically when I see someone who is casting early like that, it's typically for one of two reasons. So one would be that the club face is open, right? So if your club face is open, what we want to understand is that throwing the club out, casting the club, that is you trying to get the club face closed, usually, right? It's you, because the club face is open, and casting the club closes the face. So that's what we want to understand, is that releasing the club, that closes the club face, right? Lagging the club, that opens the club face, right? So if I have the face open, I can't really lag the club, because that's just going to make the face more open. And then as a right-handed golfer, you'll hit everything to the right. So your brain says, I got to get that club face closed So in order to do that, I'm going to cast the club out so that way I can get it closed. So the first thing you probably need to do is get the face more closed. The easiest way to do that is through strengthening the grip, getting the grip in a stronger position. That's the first thing that Clay talks about in the 20-minute shallowing fix. All right. So that'd be number one. All right. Number two is coming down steep. Right. So if you come down steep, you will tend to stand up out of it as a means to get the club to shallow out later. Right. So let me demonstrate. If I'm coming down steep like this, right, I can stay in my posture and keep the lag and be in a great position, as far as my body rotation goes, coming into contact. But look at where that club's going. That club is coming down way over the top. And when that happens, you're going to tend to be very inconsistent and hit terrible golf shots, right? You're going to hit pulls to the left, slices to the right, pull hooks. And that's if you're even able to make good contact with the ball. Most likely, you're going to have a hard time making good contact with the ball in general, right? You're going to hit it off the toe, chunk, top, all kinds of things, right? So what people will do is when they're coming down steep is that they'll stand up, right? They'll stand up out of it and look what happens to the club, right? See how the club shallows out now? And now I'm able to hit a functional shot. But because I've stood up out of it, I have to cast the club to get to the ball, because if I were to keep all the lag and everything as I stood up out of it, my club's not going to get to the ball. It's going to swing above the ball, right? Your brain's not going to let you do that. Your brain is going to say, hey, I got to get down to the ball, so I have to cast the club to get to it. All right? So really what you probably need to do is work through the 20-minute shallowing fix. And when you're working through the 20-minute shallowing fix, don't even think about the casting. Don't even think about it. More than likely, as a virtue of getting the face more closed and getting the club coming down in a better position, you will cast less. And I think that also people get a little bit too obsessed with the cast. Not saying that you're doing this, but I find just working with a lot of students that people get obsessed with the casting of the club, when in reality, you can cast the club. You can have a flip at contact. The only time that it's actually a major problem is if you have backward shaft lean. So you come into contact and you're like this, where the shaft's actually leaning backwards, because that's not going to allow you to get the bottom of the swing where it needs to be, right? Because if you release it too early where you have backward shaft lean, your club's going to bottom out before the ball. When the ball's on the ground, you just can't make ball first contact, right? So we need the hands just to be, it has to be just slightly ahead, right? But if you look like this at contact, right, that is really, it's fine. It really is fine. I think a lot of people put too much effort in trying to get like this. And a lot of people just don't have the flexibility or the club head speed to really support that. Now, if you're a really high club head speed player, and meaning you're over 110 miles an hour with your driver, and you look like this at impact with your iron, you're probably hitting the ball really, really high, and it would definitely benefit you to get the ball flight a little bit lower by getting some shaft lean. But those would kind of be the only situations. If you're swinging your driver less than 100 miles an hour and you look like this at contact, getting like this is probably going to make you hit the ball way too low, because you just don't have the energy to give the ball to keep it climbing up in the air. So now it's hard for me to say exactly what you need to do without seeing your swing, but my recommendation, just based on the information that you've given me, is I'd recommend working through the 20-minute shallowing fix, get that face closed, get that club shallowing out, and more than likely a lot of the stuff will improve without you even really having to think about it. But if the face is open and you're coming down steep, you're always going to be fighting that casting, even if you work on the casting directly, right? Because it's what you need to do to hit a good shot. And if you try to work on casting without the root cause as to why you're casting, then you'll more than likely hit the ball much worse, because you're more than likely casting and as a solution to hit a shot in the direction of the target, right? Because like I said, if you were coming down steep at the start of the downswing and you just rotated through the ball with tons of shaft lean and didn't cast the club, you'd probably hit terrible golf shots. And if you kept all the lag in the club, let's say you were shallowing at the club, but you kept all the lag in the club and the face is wide open, right, and you came through contact with the face wide open, you would also hit terrible golf shots. So more than likely, your casting is your solution right now to hit a a functional shot, right? So what I'd recommend doing is work on the things that are directly related to that, and more than likely you're casting and you're coming down steep, or if you're coming down steep, but that casting will likely improve, and it will at least set you up to be able to work on it more directly to get it working better. So that's what I'd recommend doing. You could also, I would recommend, working with an instructor, doing the online lessons. Let me see if anybody's got any spots available. That'd also be something I'd recommend doing. Just a second here. All right, so I got one spot available right now. And then Chris Hunsaker's got some spots available right now. So yeah, if you're interested in online lessons, you can click the, if you wanted to work with me, you can click the link above the video. Or if you want to check out Chris Hunsaker, you can just go to the Swing Reviews page, and you can get there from the top of the page here. All right, let's keep going. Sorry, I lost my spot here. Okay. So Troy P says, can you go over ball positions for chip shots on different slopes? So the slope really isn't going to change the ball position. Really, it's really going to be the same. The key is just to go with the slope and understand that if you're on a downward slope, the ball is going to come out lower, because essentially the downward slope is de-lofting the club, but the ball position really isn't going to change. Generally, ball position, and it really depends on the kind of shot that you're trying to hit. But ball position is generally going to be about middle of the stance, right? So feet close together, about middle of the stance. If I want to drive it in lower, I may play it more off my back toe. If I want to bring it in a little bit higher, I may play it a little bit more toward my front toe and open up the face a little bit. But as far as uphill, downhill, I'm not really going to change my stance a little bit. The only thing I would really do if I had a big time downhill slope is I might place my my back foot behind me a little bit to make it easier to get that club to work from the inside. That'd be about the only thing I would do. And on an uphill slope, if I don't really want the ball to go sky high, I might put the ball a little bit more back in my stance to kind of counteract the slope, right? And then if it's a really downward slope, again, I might put my foot back behind me a little bit and play it a little bit more forward to counteract the de-lofting that's coming from the downward slope. So Jeff Cooper says, Q, hope all is well, playing well. Always can fix what's wrong in the round. Awesome. Thanks for checking in, Jeff. Glad to hear things are going good. So Mike W says, my lag putting is not bad, but I am horrible from 5 feet and in. Can't seem to bring the putter back straight. Would left hand low help? So that might be part of the problem, because you don't really want to bring the putter back straight. And if you're trying to do that, that may be part of the problem. So what we want to understand is that when we're putting, right, we putt on an arc. Everyone putts on an arc, right? So because this putter has, the shaft is at an incline here. It's not 90 degrees. The only way you could really putt where it's actually straight back and straight through would be if the shaft was at 90 degrees to the sole of the club. So the lie angle was 90 degrees. And the way you would putt, if you had that, is you would putt like this, the side saddle, or it's like this, or you would putt like this, where it's straight in front of you like this. And really both of those ways are illegal, and you can't have the shafts like that. But that's the only way you can really putt straight back and straight through. I take that back. There is another way that you can do it, but it's just going to be very, very inconsistent because you have to actually manipulate the putter bringing back, right? Because naturally, because this is on an incline, right? You're going to bring the putter inside a little bit when you bring it back. It's going to go to the inside because it's going around your body, right? So that might be part of the problem, is that you're trying to bring this putter back straight through, which is going to force you to kind of push your hands out away from you. And then you got to kind of swoop the hands back this way instead of letting the putter swing naturally like it should, right? So that's what I'd be really trying to focus on, is getting the putter to move naturally back straight, not straight back, but get to move a little bit to inside. One thing that I would recommend is something like this. This is a putting mirror that I really like. This is from Back to Basics Golf. I don't have any affiliation from them. I bought this with my own money because I really like it. So it's a putting mirror. I recommend putting mirrors because it helps you to get your eyes consistently in the same place. So once you find where your eyes see straight over the ball, it's important to keep your eyes, consistently in that spot. So if you ever find your putting gets a little bit off, maybe you're not quite seeing the line right, you keep missing to the left or to the right or something like that, odds are you're just not seeing a straight, right? You're basically aiming left or aiming right every single time. So I would try to find where you see straight, and then you can use the mirror to always keep that in check, to keep, okay, my eyes need to be here in order to do that. But that's the main purpose of a putting mirror. But this putting mirror in particular has another feature where it shows the slight arc of the putting stroke. So if you look here, you can see how there is a line that goes straight back, right? And then there's this other line that kind of arcs back, right? The cool part is that you can go right-handed or left-handed. It's got both sides on there. So this helps you to kind of naturally see. And then it's got lines for the club face, for the putter face, to be perpendicular to that arc, right? So you can see how the putter swings back a little bit to the inside, right? And then swings back and then goes back to the inside, right? That's really, we can't bring the putter straight back and then straight through, because look, see how I have to move my arm away from my body to make I'm straightening out my arm away from my body, because I want to be like this, right? I want to feel like I'm kind of like swinging the door, right? So that's going to help you to be more consistent with your putting. So using something like this is a really great visual to be able to see that putter, right, going inside to inside, right? That's what we want to see. So that's probably why you're struggling, is that you're trying to bring the putter straight back and straight through, when really that's not really what happens in the putting stroke. Let the putter go inside and let it come back to the inside. And I imagine if you do that, you'll be a much better putter. But if you want to check out this, there's other things out there. Phil Kenyon, who we've talked about, he's got a rubber mat that's the same, basically this same thing. But I like this one because it's a mirror and it's got the thing on there. Again, I have no affiliations, but it's Back to Basics Golf. Check them out if you want to get one of these. I assume they still sell them. I think I probably got that a couple of years ago, but definitely something I'd recommend. All right, let's keep going. All right, so Steve says, very confused on swing path. Does club go straight back and straight up, or use forearm rotation to get club flatter? Yeah, so it's definitely going to be forearm rotation to get the club flatter. So we don't bring the club up like this, right? The club, your forearms are going to rotate to get the club in a good position at the top, and then they're going to rotate back down to the ball, right? So if I had no forearm rotation, my swing would look like this, and I can't really, I would eventually, Matt Wolf kind of brings the club back like this, but then he rotates his forearms at the top to get it shallowing out, right? So we can't really hit a ball going like this, right? I mean, you could, but it's just not going to be very, very powerful or very consistent. So yeah, we want to let the forearms roll as we get up to the top. Now we don't want to do it super early right away, right? If you do it right away, the club face gets very open into the inside, and then you're typically going to come over the top in the downswing. So it's going to be a gradual thing as we get up to the top, kind of like that. So you can see my forearms are rotating here as I'm getting up to the top. So Diane says, hi Q, I watched you video with a student and how you helped him with his swing. I've been doing what you explained in the video to keep the left knee bent during the downswing and then straighten the knee when you turn, and it has helped me to stay down in the swing, and it seems like I can turn better and get more distance. Did I understand the video correctly and what you were guiding him to do? Yeah, so I think I know the video that you're referring to. So basically what he was doing is he was kind of bumping the hips forward. So he was straightening out the lead leg early and then kind of bumping the hips forward. And he was kind of coming in like this kind of position like this, right? So the way that we want the lead leg to move, or when we look at better players, is that when we start the downswing, your left leg is going to have some flex in it, and then when you start the downswing, you want to keep that flex and bow it out, right? And the drill that I had him do is he put an alignment stick through his belt loops, and then he had something over here that he was trying to knock down. And if he got too high, so if he did what he normally does, which is this, right? This would go above whatever he was trying to knock down, right? Whereas if he kept that left hip low and bowed out his leg, keeping the flex, and then straightened it out, right? Now you can see I'm actually clearing my hips, and I have more rotation as I'm coming in, right? So we really want to feel like that left hip goes down and around, right? If we're here and then we just go up with the hip, we're going to come into contact like that, right? And that can cause chunks and thins and poor control of the face, early release of the club, things like that. But if we get here and then we get down and around more like this, well, now I can get my body rotating out of the way, and that's what Chris was working on. So so at first we just don't want to straighten that lead leg right away. In the start of the downswing, it's going to stay flexed and it's going to bow out, and that's going to straighten as you are continuing to try to keep that left hip low. So try to keep the lead hip low, down and around. That starts with that lead leg bowing out and then straightening while also trying to keep it low. So Troy P says, for the driver's setup position, should I move the handle forward? You can. You don't have to. You can set up with the handle forward, or you can set up with the handle more in the middle of the body. It's truly play around with it to see what works best for you. So the difference would be with the handle, kind of more in the middle of my body. Here's what it would be with it more ahead. If you hit the ball better with it ahead, do that. If you hit the ball better with it more in the middle, or your hands more in the middle, then do that. It's not something that's like a hard and fast rule where you have to have your hands in a certain place to start with the driver. So Lee M says, can you discuss the shaft position of the club at 90-degree takeaway halfway back to achieve easier shallowing when swinging through? Also, I think my tendency to flip over the top swing is caused by initiating the swing with my arms instead of turning my hips, then shoulders, and dropping the club in the slot. Can you discuss proper sequence? You hit most points with the last question. Perhaps elaborate dropping club into a zone hit. Thanks. So the takeaway is really, really tough because there's lots of ways that you can take away the club and be successful. So there's not one way to take away the club that's going to get you where you need to be, right? If you look on, any high level players, you're going to see lots of different takeaways. So for example, if you talk about like Matt Wolff, right? So Matt Wolff, he brings the club back like this. He's very much hands in, club out, and then he shallows it out as he gets to the top. If you look at Raymond Floyd, he's hands in, club in, right? So he's hands in, club in, and then he brings it up to the top and shallows it out. So are either one of those wrong? Absolutely not. They work really, both of those players, play at super high level, right? And then you look at like Tiger, and he's basically halfway in between, right? He's in line with the hands. So there's no wrong way. Now, when you look at a majority of players, you're going to see the club head at this point in the swing. You're going to see the club head in line with the hands or slightly outside the hands. But that does not mean that you can't be out here or here, right? So what I would focus on the most is how the club is coming down into the ball. Get to where you can get the club to come down. And whatever takeaway you make to make that happen is 100% fine, right? So I would focus the most on getting the club working down in the downswing. Use a barrier, use a box to force the club to work from the inside. You can take a box, put it, behind the ball, right? If I come over the top and steep it all, I'm going to hit that box, an impact bag, whatever you want to use. But just make whatever backswing that allows you to get that club to work from the inside. There's no perfect answer to the question, unfortunately, that you're asking. I know you're looking for specifically what you need to do in the backswing, but what I would recommend that you do is just focus on what you're doing in the downswing, and whatever you do on the backswing, that's just what you do, and it's 100% fine, whatever it is, because there's lots of ways to get that club. If you look at I've studied lots and lots and lots of pro player swings. In the backswing, you're going to see a lot of different positions, right? But in the downswing, in that same position, that club parallel position, there's way more similarities, right? So typically, when they're club parallel to the ground in the downswing, what you're going to see is the butt end of the club pointing slightly to the right of the toe line. That's typically what you're going to see. You're going to see the club face angled slightly down to the ground some amount, right? What I see in a lot of amateur golfers is I see the club is pointing to the left of the toe line, and then the club face is angled some toward the sky, right? Or maybe they are shallowing out the club, but the club face is aiming toward the sky a little bit, right? So if you can get to where you're here, where the club face is angled slightly down toward the ground, and the butt end of the club is pointing to the right of your toe line, you're going to be in good shape. It doesn't matter how you got there. It only matters that you got there. Because if you look at different tour players, you're just going to see a lot of different swings. Now, I can discuss what I see in the takeaway in that position in basically every single tour player. And that is, one, what I'm going to see is I'm going to see the hands clear of the body, right? So at club parallel, you don't see any good players where their hands are still in front of their body. Their hands, there's space between. If you're looking for face on, you're going to see their hands are outside of their body here. So that's a wide takeaway, right? There's no players that just pick up the club, right? This is discussed in the power turn course. It's one of the first drills that you do is getting a wide takeaway, right? And the reason why it's important is because if I do this, look at how much my shoulders have turned to club parallel. Whereas if I get my hands clear of my body, now look at how much my shoulders have turned. My shoulders have turned a lot more, and that's going to allow me to get a good full shoulder turn. Typically, when I see someone do this, their shoulder turns like this. They just don't turn their shoulders very much. So getting a nice wide takeaway, that's a big part of it. The next big part of it is a slide of the hips. I don't see the hips moving way away from the target, right? Typically, what you'll see by club parallel, if you were to draw a line on the outside of a really good player's hip, right? Assuming the camera is dead still, right? What you're going to see by club parallel is that hip will be pretty much on that line or maybe even slightly inside of that line. You'll see they'll move into that line to start the backswing. That's just to move pressure into their trail foot. And then as they get to club parallel, you'll see that hip is back on that line or slightly inside that line, meaning a little bit more toward the target. There aren't any players that I've seen that have their hips moving into that line or keep moving into that line. So that would be, and the reason why that's important is because it's hard to get moving into your lead side soon enough if that's the case. So that would be one thing that I would look at as well, is how are your hips moving. But as far as where the club is going, you can be successful in having the club go inside or outside or directly in line. You can be successful with any of those. So there's no hard and fast rules that go with that. The hard and fast rules, I would say, would be a wide takeaway and no big hip sway, right? Those are kind of the hard and fast rules. Those are things that I don't see any good players with a who just pick up the club with the wrists and sway their hips that way. I don't see any good players doing that. So those would kind of be the primary things that I'd be focused on. And then as far as getting the club to shallow out, I would be focused on the downswing portion of it and getting the club to shallow out from there. So working through the 20-minute shallowing fix, that would be a good good thing to work through. Notice that in the 20-minute shallowing fix, Clay doesn't talk about the backswing, right? He doesn't talk about bringing the club inside or outside or any of that. It's because you can bring it in any of those directions in the backswing and still bring it down to the ball in a good spot. The focus of the 20-minute shallowing fix is the downswing, getting the club to work down correctly in the downswing. No problem, Lee. Glad to help. So we got 10 minutes or so left here. If we got any more questions? No problem, Jamie. Glad to help. So Diane says, do you use the same swing on the pitching wedge or gap wedge, the straight takeaway, or more upright? Yeah, you're going to use the same swing with those clubs. Again, going back to the takeaway, you can bring it inside, you can bring it outside, you can bring it in line with the hands. The takeaway is a little bit overblown as far as bringing the club inside or outside. It's really subject to the player itself. So focus on how the club is coming down in the downswing, not so much how the club is going back in the backswing. Like I said, the only things that are really important with the backswing that I see in all the best players is there's no hip sway or slide in the backswing, and then the club goes out wide. But as far as the club going inside or outside, I've seen elite level golfers do both and everything in between. So don't get too hung up on bringing the club inside or anything like that, because it's honestly it's not as important as you may think. It's all about how the club comes down in the downswing. Diane says, is there less leg movement with the pitching wedge and gap wedge because it's a shorter iron? No, it's really going to be the same swing. It's just with a shorter club. There really isn't going to be much difference or any difference really at all between the swings in those clubs. When you think about it, it's the same club. It's just shorter. A gap wedge is essentially the same as a pitching wedge. It's just a little bit a little bit shorter with a little bit more loft. That's the only real difference between those clubs. So you're not really making any different swing with it. And it's really not your pitching wedge and 6-iron really isn't going to be any different of a swing. It's just a 6-iron is a little bit of a longer club and it has a little less loft. Like that's really it's just the club is different. You don't need to do anything different with that club. Basically, any shot that you're hitting off of the ground, that's a full swing is going to be it's going to be the exact same swing. The only difference is the club, right? So the club is going to be higher lofted clubs are going to be shorter, so you're going to hit them with less speed and they're going to go higher, right? So they're not going to go as far. Longer clubs that are lower lofted, they're not going to go as high, but they're going to go farther because they're lower lofted and they're going to have a little bit more speed because the club is longer, right? So, but the swing itself is no different. It's the exact same swing. We got a few minutes left. All right, so we'll probably end on this one here. So Jeff M says, I've been hitting a lot of shanks lately and think the cause is raising and pushing out the hands at impact. If the body is turning to the left, should I feel like the hands should do as well as at impact and after? Yeah, so probably need to feel that. So generally when people are shanking the ball, it's usually because the hips are moving closer to the ball as they come into contact. Uh, so what that means is when you're coming into contact, your hips are moving forward toward the ball. And then as you can imagine, that takes away space for your hands to work through. And then that moves the hosel of the club kind of closer to the ball and leads to shanks. So what I would try to feel like is that your hips are kind of moving away from the ball. Now, the hands moving to the left can be a good feeling if you are shallowing out the club enough, right? So if you're coming down steep and then you feel your hands move, you're trying to feel your hands move more to the left, well, you're just going to come down even steeper, right? So the hands to the left thing only really works if you're shallowing out the club. Now, if you're shallowing out the club and then you're pushing your hands out to the right away from you, well, then yeah, that can cause a shank because you're basically moving the club. So you want to shallow out the club and then rotate your body and let your hands kind of work to the left as the club is working out to the ball, right? But that's not always going to be the case with everybody, right? So you got to kind of know what's going on. But the most common shank cause is just the hips moving toward the golf ball. So doing this. So I kind of look at your swing, look and see, okay, am I shallowing out the club? And then see, okay, feeling like my hands are kind of exiting to the left as I come into contact. Does that help me to get the strikes more in the center of the face? And then if you look at your swing and maybe you're shallowing out the club, but you see that your hips are doing this action, right? Well, if that's the case, I would try to make some space for your hands. Really try to feel like you're pushing your hips away from the ball as you're coming down. Make some space for the hands, and you'll likely, be able to get rid of those shanks. The other thing is change your intention at contact. Right now you're trying to hit the ball in the center of the face. So what I would also do is try to hit the ball off of the toe, and that will more than likely move those strikes more to the center of the face as well. So anyway, thanks everybody for joining me. We'll be back here tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Also, a quick reminder, we will not have office hours on Thursday and Friday. I'll be out of town those days, and unfortunately, nobody is able to cover for me. So we won't have office hours on Thursday and Friday this week, but we will be back on Monday. All right. So office hours tomorrow and 11 a.m. Talk to y'all next time. Have a good one.